So why don't we begin with Gil? Tell us what happened. How did you come upon this realization?
Well, I feel like I should begin by apologizing. I feel like it's mostly my fault that we're all here today on a beautiful Aspen day. As Graham mentioned, the 1930s was a kind of violinist's gold mine, you know. I didn't think about the 30s until the year 2000, when I guess I tried to get a handle on the 20th century in music and everything that happened in music, unsuccessfully, I might add. And I realized that there was a spike in my favorites in the 30s. And putting my personal preferences aside, it's a pretty astounding list of composers that wrote for the violin at the time. When I read this list to a friend, he said, "Well, Gil, you've just named all the great composers of the last 100 years." and it's almost true. Bela Bartok, Igor Stravinsky, Sergei Prokofiev, Alban Berg, Arnold Schoenberg, Roger Sessions, Samuel Barber, William Walton, Benjamin Britten, Darius Milhaud, Paul Hindemith, and I'm leaving out many, Karl Szymanowski, Karl Amadeus Hartmann, Ernst Bloch, all wrote violin concertos at the same time. And this is a curious coincidence because there was no saying composers must write for the violin. If anything, the violin concerto, it wasn't in vogue before these composers. Ravel, Debussy, Gershwin never wrote a violin concerto. And I thought this was thought-provoking, and decided to start studying the scores and start performing these pieces and start listening to people's reactions. Another friend to whom I read the list, musicologist and writer by the name of Jessica Duchin, when she heard the list, she said, "Well, Gil, these are certainly the most iconic works." And I liked that word. I liked iconic because it was apt. It fitted these particular pieces. I think that word can be overused, especially in the arts. But with these works, you know, they are symbolic of the time. They are emblematic of the author's voices and styles and techniques. And they are kind of a point of departure. You could start a sentence by saying, violin concertos up until Bartok's second. Or you could start a sentence by saying, violin concertos after Alban Berg's. So I became a little more sensitive to the word iconic. And I guess I was reading an article, kind of a light article, my favorite kind of reading, entitled, "Film Historians Rate the 100 Greatest Films Ever Made," you know. And I came across this sentence, and I'm paraphrasing, but it said something like, "Experts unanimously agreed that 1939 was the greatest year in Hollywood history, producing such iconic pictures as Gone with the Wind and Wizard of Oz." And I thought, well, there's that word again, you know. I was telling some of you when we were on the phone, I was listening to a clip of experimental composer by the name of Raymond Scotty playing his most famous tune, which you all probably know, you know, Powerhouse. It's and the little blurb next to the clip read, "Raymond Scotty performing his iconic 1937 Powerhouse." And I thought, okay, well, here's that word again. And anyway, at this point, I went straight to Google, and I typed in 1930s and icons. And of course, there were many hits. But I thought that they were thought-provoking. You know, there was the Golden Gate Bridge, and Dashiell Hammett, and there was the Empire State Building, and King Kong, and there was Ernest Hemingway and John Steinbeck and Brave New World and Picasso's Guernica and Salvador Dali and American Gothic and Shirley Temple. And I'm trying to remember that. Porgy and Bess, there were so many. Our national anthem was written 100 years before, but became, by governmental decree, our national anthem in 1931. And I've been going back and forth. I didn't know if I should mention Joe DiMaggio and the 1939 Yankees, 1938 Yankees, 37, 36, 32. Anyway, at this point, I was way out of my depth, and I went back to playing violin concertos. And after Stravinsky, a very eloquent patron of the National Symphony came backstage, and he asked me a question. He said, Gil, at the time when Stravinsky was writing this piece, people were living through a unique time in history. I'm paraphrasing. But he said the 1930s was a period of adversity, and people lived with tumult and trepidation. And the feeling was as if on the edge of a volcano, waiting for the eruption. How was this reflected in the music of the day? How does this relate to our times? And how does this relate to the music of today? And I don't know the answer, but I thought it would be worthy of a discussion, and so I'm thrilled to be here today with you and with this distinguished panel. And I'm going to stop talking now.
Gil? Do you want to play a little bit of something just to get to whet the appetite for the discussion?
Sure.
Yeah. We had the Berg chorale, which you had suggested from the violin concerto, the Stravinsky, Barber. Let's just choose one for the sake of time. We can come back and play some others.
Would you like to start with the Berg, maybe?
Yeah, that sounds great.
The Berg Violin Concerto is an incredible piece that is actually directly related to Walter Gropius. It was the death of his daughter, Manon. She was the daughter of Walter Gropius and Alma Mahler. And she was the apple of Vienna's eye, kind of the second coming of Alma. And she was taken by polio. And this was the final straw, what finally persuaded Alban Berg to write this violin concerto that the violinist Louis Krasner had been pestering him to write. And the concerto is in two parts. The first part depicts her life. The second part begins by describing her death in a very operatic, dramatic fashion. It describes her death struggle and death throes. And then the second half of this second part is a very touching, I guess it's the idea is her transcendence. And it's a very famous passage in which he uses a melody from a Bach chorale called Es ist genug. It's, it is enough, Lord, I'm ready for you to take me. It's from the cantata number 60, Ewigkeit, du Donnerswort, eternity, you word of thunder. And what happens is the violin plays this melody with Berg's own 12-tone harmonization, very poignant, very dissonant, and this sort of weeping violin. And then it's immediately contrasted with Bach's original, in Bach's language, with a group of clarinets, which really sounds like an organ, from a faraway, village. And there's something about this passage that I feel is a metaphor for the whole time, because it does have in it, this longing for the old world and this anxiety about the new world and where are we going. And I talk too much.
No.
Let's play music.
Alban Berg's Violin Concerto, the chorale passage.